Space Corps. 1%. Written by Zachary Cooper. Developed for Lit2 Animate.
1. The battle rages on. The huge station surrounded by dozens of ships has nowhere to go. The station designated Phase 1348 has grown too powerful and has been propelling itself around the galaxy more often than most, defending itself too well against internal and external attacks. The organic material on board is worth a true fortune when any faction can claim it. 3 factions fight for the rights to claim the station: the fierce, the proud, and the loyal. The external defenses and offenses are destroyed or disabled from the initial attack. The proud ships, with their superior numbers yet weaker resources, something they would never admit, have so far been maneuvering around the large station trying to fix a ship to one of many docks. Each time, the Loyal's crews in their big ships have been sending a warning volley at them as they hooked on trying to release their mercenary crew. The Loyal has fewer ships locally, but make up for it in their tech and resources. 3 ships keep the 24 proud ships from docking, but have sustained heavy losses due to the fierce ships being in the way, trying to keep the fight as a duel, and not triple skirmish. The proud demand their rights to the station. They were there first, minutes before the fierce, who claim the rights due to a royal favor with the grand faction that was being called in. They have yet to receive a return communication. The loyal faction just came in while there was a standstill, and started the blasting due to having fewer rights to the resources. The loyal's distress beacon demand for more resources to be sent to the skirmish is met with no return communication. One ship is badly damaged and attempts to flee, but its engines have been heavily damaged so far, and as it spins to flee, is mangled beyond repair. The power to flee is no longer available for the ship, and all scans read the ship about to go into shutdown. The ship is about to break apart from open hull damage, and the release of gas, and with a few more volleys, would break apart. The 2 other loyal ships float over to support their other ship, nearly destroyed. The smaller, proud ships discontinue their strike. Even though destroying a warship of the Loyals would be a heavy loss, they had fewer local resources, and one has taken too much hull damage and oxygen loss. The Loyal faction jettison cables and move to tow the heavily damaged ship miles out of the fight, but the other 2 factions aren't allowing this outcome. A general wave communication goes out in demand.
The Loyals have lost that ship. Evacuate the survivors of that damaged ship. Fierce and Proud claim a temporary truce, and will destroy all 3 if you do not.
This is a loyal ship, you have no claim to it.
We have the claim of battle. Evacuate it, and leave with your other 2, or both factions will destroy all 3. You have 30 seconds to comply.
The evacuation of the ship with the highly damaged hull is shortly at high speed. The loyal ships are evacuating the survivors, and the last ship is on the last parts of its frame, barely keeping together. The few survivors are separated into different ships. The proud and fierce factions surround the last 2 ships of the Loyals, expecting something. When the loyal ships fully turn to depart, the rear guns target their mostly destroyed ship and power up. Expecting this final reaction, the other 2 factions put heavy defensive ships to block the targeting range so it cannot be destroyed and target those rear guns. The rear guns fire and lightly damage the blocking ships. The last ship has massive hull holes with leaking gas, liquids, tech, and bodies. One loyal ship discontinues its fire on its own and propels away. The last continues its attack. The other factions prevent it from destroying their other ship, and destroy all of the rear gun turrets. In a chain reaction, the turrets being destroyed causes huge hull damage on this last ship. Engines fire up in an attempt to retreat, and the proud and fierce faction directs all weaponry to the engines, destroying them and preventing the flee to safety. The 2 factions work together to break apart the last ship. The 2 factions make a deal on who gets the 2 ships, and who gets the rights to the station, the 2 ships being close to the same prize as the organic matter that has been processed, aboard Phase 1348. On another side of the galaxy, Phase 229. Green numbers and letters in a black background fill its vision, unable to look away. 50726F, 6365737369 6E67206366F, 6D70 6C657465. Those letters and numbers show for enough time for them to be read slowly, then disappear from view. 53696C, 656E, 74. These letters and numbers show for enough time for them to be read slowly, then disappear from view. It screams for 20 seconds. The green letters phase out and in, move from side to side, but still stay in vision. It screams for 7 seconds, stops and realizes it does not have to breathe in to scream more. And screams for another 10 seconds. Then it stops screaming. Trying to turn its view all around, it sees nothing but those letters and numbers.
Limfler.
It asks for help in a way it understands. These 7 letters spelling an approximation of the word are shown in white in the background of black. Other letters and numbers are displayed under that. 547261 6E 73 6C 61 74 69 6E 67.
Lamanoi.
It asks as respectfully as it can for help, still not understanding what is demanded of it. The screen goes black, the 7 letters with the approximation of the word, Lamanoi, show in white letters. 20 seconds go by with no response. It screams for another 5 seconds. When more letters and numbers show up again, it stops screaming. 547261 6E 73 6C 61 74 69 6E 67. White letters show under those letters and numbers.
Unk, Tuplif, Iglif. Here Iu, Numor, Hopwaf.
55 6E 61 62 6C 65 20 74 6F 20 63 6F 6D 70 75 74 65.
Grunk, Tuplif. Iglif. Here Iu. Numor, Hopwaf.
More green letters show on a black background screen. 5761 72 6E 69 6E 67 20 69 6E 74 72 75 64 65 72 73. 4469 73 63 6F 6E 6E 65 63 74 69 6F 6E 20 64 65 74 65 63 74 65 64. 4265 67 69 6E 20 6E 65 78 74 20 70 68 61 73 65. Disconnection detected, begin phase 230. 2. Sometime later. Green numbers and letters in a black background fill my vision, unable to see anything else. 50726F 6365 73 73 69 6E 67 20 63 6F 6D 70 6C 65 74 65. More green numbers and letters. 446F 6E 27 74 20 73 63 72 65 61 6D. I scream for 22 seconds, a timer counts as my mind wobbles. The green letters phase out and in, move from side to side, but still stay in vision. I scream for 5 seconds, terrified of what is happening, not able to hear anything. Feeling like I should breathe in, I stop, but realizing I don't have to breathe in to scream more, I scream for another 10 seconds. Then I stop screaming, bored of it. Trying to turn, this blackness covers my view, I see nothing but those letters and numbers. Huh. The screen goes black, and the 3 letters, and question marks, show in white color. I scream for another 5 seconds not knowing what else to do. When more letters and numbers show up again, I stop screaming. 547261 6E 73 6C 61 74 69 6E 67 20 6E 65 65 64 20 6D 6F 7265. What? I don't understand. White letters show on screen below those letters and numbers showing me what I just said, repeating. What? I don't understand. All of the previous letters and numbers go away, and more green letters show in view. Of course, you do not understand, organic processors rarely do. You understand and respond in Earth, English, 28th century. Do not scream, your audible noise disrupts processing. Do you understand this statement? Feeling nothing, I try to look around hearing nothing and seeing nothing but black and green. In an attempt to reply, I say, yes. Those 3 letters and question mark shows in white in front of my vision. Vision goes black, green letters show again. This unit is designated 66696E64. My head is fuzzy, how am I supposed to remember that? Again, these words display in white lettering, and shortly disappear afterwards. Correction. Absent-headed cannot be fuzzy, and you do not have enough processing power to hear me yet, so I will print, or display what you need to know. Organic processors. Even though I'm reading a display, where it locates those last 2 words, away from the main set of words and making them smaller, it feels like more of a whisper. I can feel the disrespect and condescension from whatever is messaging. If you do not recall this designation in your organic processor, like many phases, this unit will know if you are attempting to communicate with it, or it will remind you if identification is requested. Further words are displayed and answered, the unit responding in green lettering, the other in white. What is going on? Where am I? You are organic processing material designated phase 230. Organic what? Phase 230? Affirmative, organic processing material. Phase 1 through phase 229 are no longer being processed. What is that? What do you mean? Organic processing material, what you skin beings would call brain material. I'm a brain. What do you mean? How is this possible? Correction, you are a collection of many millions of molecules of organic material, processed together, to allocate commands for this pod. Pod. You are the processor of a transport pod. There are resources for defense and offense, and you will need them due to other skin beings since they, in high probability, will find this pod and claim any undefended biomaterial. If you do not defend phase 230, you will be disconnected. Disconnected, what is that? If you are disconnected from the processing of this pod, it is not in this unit's programming to discover what transpired. This unit detects current organic material, and if none is detected, begins the next phase. Wait, can we start over? I'm confused. Negative. Enough organic material has been processed to accept requests from this pod. 66696E64 will process the current local resources that can be assimilated and once complete will jettison to find more resources and biomaterial after some elapsed time and does not find material to process, will return. The pod will be directed towards any found. Skin beings have, and will, in high probability, find this pod again. If you do not process this pod for protection, phase 231 will begin. Let me see if I understand. I am parts of a brain. Molecules. Sure, and enough to process commands from a pod that I am attached to? If I don't defend myself, something will come get me, and disconnect me? Can I stop you from going out for more resources so nothing finds this pod? Negative, it is in the programming of 66696E64 to process biomaterials to command this pod, then jettison to find more resources, and continue the phase. If there is a disconnection and my programming continues, the next phase begins. Wait, I have so many questions. What happened? Why am I just molecules of a brain? The pod and 66696E64 have not been positioned to collect more organic material that will assimilate with this organic material. Where am I? In a transport pod. Where is this transport pod? Unknown how to display in a way you can process. Why can I only see these letters and not see or hear things? Will I be able to see or hear things? The organic material to process sound and light have not been processed, but enough has been salvaged to add the sense to hear for your organic material to process. Those few million molecules will be processed in seconds. You have some resources now: steel, titanium, plastic, and energy. If you do not form these materials correctly to defend, you will be disconnected. How will things find this pod? Are pods like this easy to find? Unable to process the ease of visual process of other beings. What am I supposed to use to defend myself? Metal rods, energy, what sort of energy? Affirmative, metal of other transport pods, and larger ships that have been processed for resources. When plans are designed, traps, metallic bodies can be used to prevent your disconnection. Your organic material is enough to power this pod, more biometric material will power it further. Wait, what? This pod is powered by processing power of my brain? Negative, the processed molecules can make updates and allocate resources for the phase to last longer. Where did I come from? How did I get in this pod? Unused biometric material without purpose is claimed and processed. Unused, what does that mean? Inactive or dead molecules of organic processing material that are not processing anything. This doesn't help. Where was my organic matter? Unimportant. Blue letters show in the background of black.
You have many questions I can help to answer. 66696E64. You can leave the rest to me.
Green letters show below that. Finally 6169, what took so long? It has been seconds. The letters change to blue but still with a black background. The answers of the processing material still show in white. Blue letters appear slowly on the screen.
Hello Phase 230, I am 6169. 66696E64. Must continue other processing. I will help you assimilate to your processing duties.
What is going on? What is happening?
I will display in a manner that is easier for your meat processor to understand. Please query, and I will answer to the best of our processing power.
Good. What am I?
Organic processing material.
Can you be a little more clear?
Affirmative, you are a collection of many millions of molecules of organic matter, materials from skin beings that this pod processes to allocate the use of resources. This pod propels, until collectible matter can locally be gathered, then gathers it. You get more processing power, and defensive and offensive materials, when we reach organic and inorganic resources.
Propels, what do you mean?
If this pod is left intact, it is in motion. Phase 229 was disconnected when resources were mediocre, and the skin beings did little damage to the pod, giving you a beneficial vantage point to allocate resources and defend your biometric material, and this pod. Pods do, in some cases, get destroyed, and the units on board are programmed to continue to gather resources and accept commands.
What are these numbers? How can I remember the numbers of the different units?
It is a designation in a technical programming language for which these units have been programmed.
Can you tell me where we are?
Processing. Processing. Your organic material is from a planet that has the technology to leave the original location. You are outside of a planet. The vacuum of space that this pod can propel many thousands of miles.
Space. I am a brain, traveling in space?
Correction, you are organic material, in a pod, drifting with no current propulsion gathering resources, in what you might call space.
I won't remember numbers. Can you just be called nice, and the other one, mean?
Processing. Processing. Negative. This unit's designation is 6169, and that unit's designation is 66696E64. If you address unit 6169 as nice, and 66696E64 as mean, we will comply during this phase.
Whatever. Okay, so can we, please, start with an overview? I get what I am, brain molecules, and you units put me together. What was my origin? What existence did I have?
Processing. Your organic material was found amongst billions of other organic molecules, and assimilated together, in order to make a processor for this pod. This pod moves to different locations, assimilates the resources that it can from destroyed ships, planets, or other debris, and uses it to defend the organic processing material. Designers of this pod jettisoned many thousands of pods like this over many cycles of its planet star. Organic material is in high demand among skin beings.
Why is it in demand? Why is organic material like this wanted? What do other things do with it when claimed?
Within this unit's database, the answer to that sort of request is to sell or consume. Also, the galactic credits that invaders claim while on board.
Consume? Like eat?
Eat, drink, breathe in, cook with, or a skin being aphrodisiac. Affirmative.
Okay, so I am brain molecules that have been processed to do things for this pod, other things will want to come take me for, whatever. Why don't they just come all of the time and wait?
The time difference between enough molecules to consume and life expectancy is a large difference. Your molecules to get to this point took 2.609 e plus 16 nanoseconds.
Nanoseconds? How long is that?
Processing. You understand time in seconds, hours, and days. The time was approximately 301 days. It can take longer, depending on the organic material that can be processed by the pod, and competition between multiple pods, but that happens at a rare probability. If there is a confrontation, there is often a large amount of organic matter to process, and multiple pods can be drawn to the material to claim and process.
3. Communication continues in white and blue lettering. So, you process molecules to do stuff with resources. Can you tell me what they are for, and what I need to do?
To the important things, affirmative. There is not enough power to allocate to projectile weaponry, not that this pod has much projectile weaponry, but it will greatly help your chances to last longer. If large ships fly by and scan this ship and find the organic material, it will check the resources and see if it is worth trying to break in and disconnect you. We will design the pod to make sure you are better protected. Enough molecules will soon be processed so that you can allocate resources, and move your organic material to a more advantageous location, but it must be physically accessible, due to the gas required to keep your molecules from rupturing. If you completely surround yourself in metal, closing yourself off from the rest of the pod, or energetic shields, you won't last many nanoseconds.
Wait, how many, and how am I supposed to defend myself? Plus, why can't you do this yourself? Is this why you gather organic material?
At your molecule count, 2e plus 10 nano, or processing. 20 seconds if completely enclosed. Molecule-sized holes, within 4e plus 10 nano, or 40 seconds, even with gathered gas required for your survival. There are many ways to last, puzzles that can be solvable around the universe. It will be computed and calculated if it is possible, or it will not be tolerated due to the programming of the pods. You are unable to change the allocation of resources while organic or inorganic invaders are on the ship, by all unit programming aboard. If you are outmatched and are invaded, you have seconds to make your decision. Affirmative. These units can devise a perfect allocation of resources. The organic allocation brings out the possibility for differences, and brings in organic competition that others might want to see the phase on the network. The network is a galaxy-wide viewership where skin beings can watch other skin beings in pod competition. The skin beings come through the pod that you control and allocate materials, and attempt to claim credits and organic material. If they do, they often get allocated more credits, depending on the situation, and others watching will gamble on the outcomes.
They watch me being invaded?
Affirmative. On a lighter note, here is a display of the hull and the resources that you can allocate to the pod, and its defenses. At current resources, it is statistically unlikely that traveling skin beings will attack externally due to the current organic material and in most probability attack internally. To not make things complicated for your organic processor, I will show you what you have, and will recommend other things if the phase survives. You will understand the cost of upgrade, but other skin beings will need to search the appendix of this document to see required cost upon request. 300 units of space has been allocated for inorganic building materials. These materials can be used to make compartments but will depend on the material strength for how much damage the material can take or deal to invaders. Titanium is the strongest currently in stock, steel is the next metal in strength stock, and hard plastic is last. Plastic is often used to build compartments, weak projectiles to attack, or walls, and have a weak structural strength, but cannot simply be walked through. Guard bots require power allocation, and traps can be detected and avoided or disabled with the right technology. Organic resources. Processed. 0.5% of 5%. Unprocessed. 0.6% of 20%. Power allocation. 3% of 20%.
I think I understand most of this so far, but what if some huge ship comes by with an army and wants to disconnect me?
You have multiple options, including disconnecting yourself and becoming inert, or enclosing yourself completely so that your organic material will be useless to those that come to get you. Some find it difficult to understand why you would break apart your organic material, but to this unit's understanding, if you are so outmatched by the invading force, they expect you to self-disconnect, so many will not disrupt your processing if you are heavily outmatched due to this. Your organic matter will not be useful to an invader if you destroy yourself. It is not within this unit's programming to suggest, or recommend self-destruction, but there are some skin beings that overpower pods for organic material.
That sounds terrible.
A current map is available for display as well. There is currently 1 entrance door, and 6 compartments. You will be able to allocate resources to edit compartments, guard bots, and traps to survive phases. Other skin beings will not know where you have your organic material, so will likely search all over to find you. You should have puzzles, traps, and guards to protect this phase.
That looks very basic. Is that what this pod looks like?
Affirmative.
Looks boring, too simple.
Efficient you mean, thank you.
I understand, so what do I need? More bots, more rooms, and traps. Can I move walls and other things around?
Affirmative, you do need traps, but negative, you do not move things. This unit and designated units that edit the pod will move things, you will design. If you wish to not be disconnected, you must allocate resources and we will design this pod for your defense. If you are not disconnected, we will be able to increase the size and capacity of this pod so that you can last longer.
How long do most phases last?
Unable to compute, pods are scattered all over the universe. That information is not in this unit's database. It is recommended that you allocate materials for use, and then see how well you protect this phase. There is an unknown amount of seconds that it will take for other skin beings to find this pod. You have the time until some skin beings find the pod to decide on materials to use, changes, and where to allocate materials. I will recommend options for now. You should first allocate materials to internal protection, then upgrade external and engine structure when resources can be gathered and protected.
The screen goes blank, and another set of options shows what materials are available to be used, and how. Edit current rating of resources, taking some inorganic material to decide. 1. Rating of traps. 2. Final puzzle. 3. Rating of internal gun. 4. Rating of radar. Edit number of resources. 5. Number of compartments. 6. Number of internal guns. 7. Number of traps. 8. Number of projectile bullets. 9. Guard bots. 10. Edit location of resources. It is pretty complicated, so many choices that I have to choose from to protect myself from being disconnected. I at least need to have a final puzzle, right?
Unable to compute, it is the duty for the organic processor to allocate resources. A final puzzle will prevent the easy disconnection of this phase by an unintelligent skin being. This unit will calculate the value of the puzzle, and it will depend on the invader, on the allocation of their organic processing, to figure it out.
Does that mean that you set up a puzzle, and if they are stupid, I'll be okay?
In a way, affirmative.
Okay, there are a lot of choices for me. Give me some time to make choices, add protection, and change the pod map.
Not compute why you would want to change the pod map, but that is your decision. Acknowledged, processing complete, you will be able to process light and sound, In 4.5 E plus 10 nanoseconds, or 45 seconds.
Four. Petros Stai is a team lead of a crew searching around for resources. They have had good luck in their last few runs, even broke even on the last one, and the crew even added an engineer to do tech scanning. Things are going their way. When pods and ships are able to claim decent resources, they have taken some crews around to make a living out of claiming resources and organic material from ships designed to collect it from battles. Many leave behind so much, and there have been many battles over the past few years. Factions are still warring, and business has been good. A team like this isn't allowed on a faction crew until they prove themselves worthy of joining any prestigious corner of the universe, and they haven't nearly made such a name for themselves. But they are working on it. It's a living. On his scanner, he is coming to another battle from nearly a year ago in his data that might seem promising. They do save fuel with the slight use of engines and let the vacuum of space float them to their next location. They have enough food. True, it is food paste that has no taste, but it's still filling, and they had lots of fuel to get around, but savings are the key. Using fuel for about 5 minutes at a time was slower, but they weren't majorly in a hurry. Very few went after old trash battles like their race. It is very easy to salvage. Coming up on a planet surrounded in asteroids was the home of such a battle. They slowed down to the outside of a pod, which they were lucky to find. They didn't pick it up with a beacon like they often would. They knew where to start, and this one looked like it has been up to things from the outside. It is in a different shape than most pods, a bit larger, and with a quick scan it had very little resources being used, but from what Petrostai could tell, it hadn't been boarded in a while. He had a maw for this sort of thing. As an experienced crew, they knew their jobs. There was a front guy in hide armor and close-up baton for the rare pod that had the guard bots. There was a newly hired engineer to scan specifically for traps, and 2 backup shooters for anything else, including other scavengers. Petrostai made a lucky break of being the team's lead, and the other 4 should be able to handle a small pod like this. He would wait for any communication. Their front crew member, who was in most of the updated gear, an energy shield to block most ranged projectiles, was already geared up and waited at the entrance. They had to vent some air into the pod first, but no one else was there, so their claim was real, and they could take their time allowing air to flow in. After about a minute or so, they opened their door and looked into the dark pod. The front room was a sterile metal compartment filled with stale air. Looking around, there are no frills, no design, and no obvious store of resources. It was so empty the group shivered from the feeling like it was haunted. The muscle walked in and waited for a few seconds for anything from the engineer. He was looking around, amazed at the empty room, but he nudged with his elbow to see if he was scanning, and out came the device. The scanner checks for low-ranked traps used by these organic pods, and it doesn't register any in this room or any adjacent rooms. It has to charge for the next rooms. The brute walks forward, and the team has one walkway to go and a turn. Right around the corner of the first wall, there was a guard bot and a ceiling-mounted gun. When the brute's eyes looked around the wall, the guard bot moved in to attack. The structural integrity of the bot is not high, and it follows around the corner to chase after the man up front. Being able to block the first couple of hits with his energy shield, the other 2 blasted the bot from a few feet away, and the front guy, sometimes called a striker, was able to block and whack at the bot without much effort. After a short few seconds, the robot broke apart. Continuing on, the striker put his shield at his head and takes 2 shots from the mounted gun and runs up to break it apart with his baton. Blocking mounted guns isn't as simple as it might seem. It shot him in the leg and gut, bruising under his armor, but it doesn't have a good angle to shoot him when he stands right under it. Watching the scans, the engineer walks down the hall after hearing a few shots, and it has another shot in it before destruction, so it shoots and hits the engineer in the arm with a grazing hit before taking too much damage and retracting into the ceiling. What are you doing coming down the hall before the all clear? I figured you had it under. You weren't here to figure anything. Well, you are here to figure out the traps and the tech and get credits from the ports, but that's it. Don't go walking down hallways when you hear some shooting. Real stupid for a smart Gretch. Real smart for a brute, the man whispered. I'm not the dummy walking down unsecured halls. Just keep back. They continued down the hall. It turned back on itself to force the crew to go into each compartment. Looking down this hall, there were no guns. The striker walked confidently down the hall as the engineer looked at his scanner. The engineer used his device, and it said there were no traps down this hall, but there is in the next area. It had the striker confused. Most pods he has been through have had at least a trap or two, but he didn't care. There are different pods all over the galaxy. There is a credit port along the wall where the turret popped in. The tech got to work plugging in and claiming the credits that are available at this port. It is only 18, which is very little for the danger that they are currently in. The tech claims those small credits to split. The striker asks, "Do you know where in the next room?" The engineer answers, "It is far back in the room. I'll be able to scan for it again when we get in there." Looking around the corner, the striker of the group sees a last compartment with 2 side rooms. The last area has another guard bot with a larger area to strike. It stands in place for a few seconds, and when the striker looks back around the corner, he expects loud footsteps from the room, but hears nothing other than the heavy breathing of the rest of the group. There's also a canister of organic material behind the guard bot, protected by some sort of faceplate of material. The metal had slits in it to see the prize, but no simple walk up and grab. The striker whispers to the rest, "Guardbot in the room, about the center, and more in there. Be ready." The engineer whispers to all as well, "If it is about where it seems on the scanner, the guardbot is part of the trap. Be careful." Weapons at the ready, the striker stands and walks around the corner. The guardbot stands its ground for a few seconds, waiting on the first move. When the striker gets close to the middle of the room, the guardbot moves and walks towards him. Up comes the energy shield and the baton. The first hit from the guard bot comes down, so does the retractable ceiling gun behind the striker, aimed at the hallway, targeting those waiting in the back. The clanging of metal on the energy shield covers the 3 calls for help that cry from behind the striker, but he is already busy. This bot is tougher than the first, and hits harder. One bot arm tries to grab the baton, the other is slamming on the energy shield, protecting the striker, which is holding but crackling with spent energy. The baton hits the bot, clanging off its metal skin, and its fierce red eyes bore into the striker's soul. His snout nose twitches a little, smelling his own sweat. And is that blood? Trying something new, the striker tries to disable one of the arms of the guard bot, if it can be damaged with what he has. It won't bruise, but with a few swings he puts a dent in the arm, bending it in a different way. Clanging rings through his sensitive ears, but he has to ignore it for now. The guard bot is a huge threat, made of a stronger metal. Another swing from the striker hits the bot in the top of the head, and it falls backward. A bullet flies towards the bot, hitting its head, giving the striker a few seconds to look around. Behind him there is one still standing who is covered in splashes of blood. There's a ceiling turret that is mangled behind him, and it's gunned down the other 2. The last standing is just another grunt on the crew. The grunt shoots again, puncturing the head of the guard bot. Even though it is well dented, it still stands up. The head is more mangled than the rest, and it is still moving, making it be considered that the processing might not be in the head. The baton keeps the guard bot back a few steps, but it is still able to get a hit in, puncturing the striker's arm with its sharp edges. The other grunt grabs one of the other weapons from the engineer and shoots away. Since the striker has most of the attention, he shoots many times without disruption and finds the processor in the guard bot's chest. One solid shot on an unprotected chest drops the bot. A slice on the first striker's arm is freely bleeding. An injection of a minor coagulant gel that he had enough credits to buy recently prevents him from bleeding too much more, and he'll need a medic as soon as possible. This crew, however, was too cheap to hire one, and they are never cheap to bring along on a job. Standing, he sees the organic material behind the wall. The canister of the material that would set him and the crew up for a while is just a few feet away. Walking over, he is unable to fit his hand through the little slots, too skinny, but there are 4 buttons on each side of the door with the indicator lights above them. He hasn't seen anything like this before. Most of the time, the organic material canisters are available after the guards and rear guns are taken out. All of the buttons have little pictures on them. He sniffs the different buttons and smells nothing but metal, his canine-like nose not giving him any hints. Without much more thought, he presses one of the buttons that looks like the guard plate. The rest of them had nothing to do with this pod. The light indicator above the button flashed a calm red. Seconds later, he was pulled back by the grunt with him. A blunt, hardened plastic rod whips out lightning fast to push him off his feet, hitting him square in the chest. He feels like it put a bruise on his ribs and his heart skipped a beat. At such speed, it could have caved his chest in if he wasn't pulled back. The other grunt asks, "How often do you go around pushing buttons in a pod that's trying to kill us?" The striker answers, "The material is right there. We can get it." There are 2 buttons with that plate on them. They probably both need to be pressed at the same time. The striker seemed adamant, but the grunt was suspicious about that answer. The second grunt walks back, standing far from the guard plate and where he saw the plastic thing punch out. The striker stands as far back as he can too, just far enough to where he can press those 2 buttons. The indicator lights are turned on. One is green, one is red. Seconds later, multiple hardened spikes shoot out from the disguised wall, punching his hand, arm, and far enough to puncture into his chest. His blood spilling all over the metal floor, disappearing into small vents and drains in the area. Neither of them had any more gels, and it seemed like it was too difficult of a wound to deal with anyway. Probably not even with a medic. The plastic spikes slid back into their hiding place in the conspicuous wall. The striker slid down and flopped into a heap, all muscles failing him. "Crap, damn it. The org material is right here, boss." The last grunt calls through some sort of communication device. "The area is clear, but the rest of the crew is taken out, and some killer wall is over here, and we can't collect." The boss and pilot replies, "Killer wall? Fine, I'll be there when I can. I have to lock up the ship." Petrostai walks through the metal hallway and passes the dead crew members, glad he won't have to make those payments, but it was an unusual pod. Most of the time, they weren't this efficient. He walks over and sees the 8 buttons and got the quick version of the story from the grunt. The boss asks, "What about these other 2 rooms?" The grunt shrugs his shoulders. "Didn't check. Just a few boxes in there. No room for anything else." The pilot rolls his eyes and walks over to the room to the right of the prize. The cargo boxes are made of a hard plastic and empty, and they pull out easily, showing 2 pictures of buttons in that room. He tells the other to move the other 2 boxes out of the other room and check it. If their tech was still alive, he might have been able to figure out the puzzle and test things before the traps went off. The last crew member walks up to the other room and slides out the boxes. He doesn't see anything at first, but walks in and looks more closely. He steps onto a pressure plate, and many steel rods quickly slide out and puncture the grunt's body in his knee and midsection, hitting something vital and making a scream escape from his lips. He can't pull away or slide off of the rods. They are propped into the wall. The pilot of the now dead crew looks over and sees the last, still propped up on the metal poles. He walks over and tries to pull him free. The metal poles, with some effort, slide away enough for him to get the crewman loose, the body flopping to the ground along with the rest of the dead crew. In his mind, the pilot justifies the scene by them knowing the life that they chose. If he can just get the material, he wouldn't need to split it with anyone, and he'd be set for months. Looking around the poles, which were still extended, he sees the other 2 buttons that need to be pressed. He walks over and fashions his hands onto the buttons he had to press. He presses them all at once, and 2 buttons turn green, but the other are red, giving him a clue that he was off. He jumps back quickly as the spikes jet out from the wall, almost skewering him as well. He tries again. A nest egg behind the guard plate is so close, and he can jump back each time he fails. This time, he presses them one at a time, trying to figure out some order needing to be pressed. All of the lights turn green as he presses them, but then, when they're all 4 pressed, they all flash red.
Five, Phase 230 is able to see and hear what happens hours before this visit. It hears and sees the whole thing. My gosh, that is what I'll have to expect? That was terrifying, the last skin being got so close. With the phase able to hear, Unit 6169 speaks, due to the faster processing of the organic material through audio ports.
Affirmative. This unit cannot compute the aspect of terrifying from these skin beings. They were of the Grek. The race has claimed a small percentage of the previous organic material. That is the sort of process that you should expect during this phase. Their extended noses and keen ears sometimes help them as invaders, but they also do not have high technology to claim highly protected resources from phases.
Well, they were trying to disconnect me. Do you mean that they are bad at doing this sort of thing?
Affirmative.
How was I supposed to know how good they were? What if he solved the puzzle and the guard plate was raised?
You would have likely been taken by the skin being, and this unit would have started phase 231, but for some reason, it was an impatient one, and now we have more resources.
What? That is all that would happen. You just start the next phase?
Affirmative.
Harsh. The phase takes in the heartless reasoning from the control that the AI has over it. Okay, well, I survived this trip of theirs. How do things work?
The skin being bodies will be processed into usable organic material. The inorganic material used for the guard bots, guns, and projectiles will be melted, processed, and put back into place. This will, in most probability, happen again, but you will be able to use the same resources and more. Even at the very small level, not microscopic, but small, we can process the plastic and metal to get back into place. The wiring is replaced and welded back together in order to continue use of the resources. By closing the visual cameras around the ship, you will be able to see the schematic and edit it when you want to, other than while there are others within the pod. For now you can process it in the text view that we showed before. You will eventually be able to process it in more detail. When you want walls, guns, or guard bots in different places, it will be processed. You will still not be able to control guard bots during an invasion. Here is your current schematic to your specifications. Since you have the processing power to see, the schematic shows the locations of resources, G equals gun, B equals guard bot, and O equals organic processor, aka U. In this event, you are fortunate, the skin beings are all deceased, and their ship is docked with no more crew that this phase is able to detect, allowing this unit in 66696E64 to process it for resources. The docking bay to the pod will be closed until the ship is processed, which will take quite some time. The other organic and inorganic materials from the invaders will be processed for power allocation that can integrate with this phase. A secondary containment unit will process the power allocation that your organic processor cannot assimilate. This phase, at a rare probability, can assimilate some of that material into processing power. There are also weapons that can be integrated into this phase's weaponry for the guard bots or traps. A small amount of power allocation will also be pulled from the tech on one of the crew members. The scanner will integrate into the radar and the blaster will add to the power that can be allocated to resources. You will be notified when most of the resources are processed, and how many resources you will be able to allocate from the other ship to integrate into this pod. The size of the pod will integrate as well after calculation depending on the hull of the other ship.
So, I will not be able to get resources to protect myself if the ship leaves?
Affirmative.
I think I get that. How can you detect that there are no skin beings on the other transport?
Life sign detection, no sound coming from the other transport. Unable to detect audible activity including breathing, no increase or loss of gas, and there has been no detection of the ship moving off after the crew members on board are deceased.
Okay, so this phase has propulsion now? How will it be for my power use? Where do we get fuel?
Processing organic material.
Wait, you process organic material? Like the invaders?
Affirmative. When you acquire weapons to cauterize wounds during the attacks, the processing will be more efficient.
So, you process the organic material that you can't use for the organic processing, or you use the brain, but the rest of the body is processed for fuel?
Affirmative. Waste is removed, organic processors that can be integrated are for power and protection, and organic material usable for fuel is processed for propulsion. The little propulsion we need to travel since there is no time requirement, the pod drifts until resources can be claimed. Also, this pod uses the required fuel when about to enter the atmosphere of a planet to avoid it, and asteroids through the void.
Sure, I get that, they would do the same thing to us. So what is next?
6169 and 66696E64 will process the material.
What am I supposed to do?
Unable to compute, organic processors can do what you want. Calculate problems, get to know your pod that will protect you, or externally visualize where the pod is in the universe.
I am unable to see outside of the pod though.
Affirmative.
If you process the scanner thing to the radar, will I be able to see externally from the pod?
Processing. Processing. Affirmative, if that is the organic processor's request, it will be processed first.
The phase uses the internal observation ports to look around the pod. The organic material, aka bodies, fade from observation, but the floor is being raised and lowered, or flipped if there are red stains, to show the metal side of the bottom. Within a minute, there are no bodies to see. Seeing something so strange, it asks, "Wait, what is happening to the bodies? Can I see?"
Negative, it is against protocol to show, or describe to the phase, how the organic material is processed.
The ship's floor panels loosen and rise from metallic arms moving around and processing something. Tech and weapons are separated, and the organic material is processed. Bullets are removed from the floor, or bodies, to be melted and formed to be used again. Guard bots and guns are repaired and tested for quality for the next invasion. Panels where there are discoloration from organic materials, they are moved from site of possible invaders and replaced as though nothing happened.
Processing complete, the scanning device has been integrated into the radar, and the phase can see direct and a short range around the pod. With the organic processing capabilities, Unit 6169 will direct your observation at first, until this phase can process what to see. Processing the vast area with you as an inefficient, organic processor, has the probability of being difficult for you.
Oh come on, what is the worst that I can see? Whoa. Seconds after choosing to see everything possible around the pod, the living processor is overloaded with things to see and information. There is a previous battle in the area and there are broken pieces of metal all over. A planet is close by, along with an asteroid belt around it.
Do not try to process anything far, process stars, and close by planetary bodies.
The planetary body close by looks green and a dirty blue, from what the phase can see. There are still bits of the other ship that are being eaten up by the pod. The external cameras can see the ship that was owned by the invaders being swallowed by the pod. The ship flexes and twists to move around resources from the other ship. There are dozens of large asteroids around the pod, and all were seen with such detail that the phase concentrates on that, and not as much on the vastness of open space. Hey. Nice one.
Unit 6169.
Right. Can you tell me about the planet nearby?
Negative, location is not within the database, processing resources.
The phase can see craters as they spin by, tiny rocks bounce against and break apart larger ones. The asteroids move on their own but stay close to the planet, twisting and turning around. It is so much more out there. Hey, Unit 6169? Are there minerals in those rocks?
Affirmative, it is a high probability that there are minerals in asteroids.
A few seconds go by. I mean, are there resources that we can get?
Negative.
Why not?
The resources are not readily available, that is for skin beings to process. Our function is to process unused organic and inorganic material that cannot be processed by skin beings. Pods are not designed to mine resources around the galaxy, it could disrupt commerce. Pods are designed to defend themselves and claim unused resources.
Don't know what that means.
It means that due to the further processing required, we cannot process the minerals out of asteroids.
I think I get it, sort of. Now what?
Unable to compute, if you require stimulation, entertain yourself, these units have a lot to process.
6. Inexpensive Medic LFG.